First of all, I broke my toe. I'm fine. Everything's fine. I'm just supremely irritated about it. Also, the heart doctor told me like a month ago, this baby's giving me really high heart rates, that I needed to sit still more. And I have not done that. So now I have to sit down and be mad about it. And they're like, oh, how long is it going to take to get better? 4 to 6 weeks, just approximately the exact amount of time until this baby pops out of my body. Anyways, thank you for being here. I don't know what to do with myself. I don't like it when people make a big deal about me. I feel awkward and weird, but it's very sweet, and I love you all so much. And thank you to Terry and Lori and Jenny for being brave enough to share your lives with us, because that's terrifying. Like, I do this all the time, but, you know, it's hard for other people. So today's topic is rebirth, and I love it. Also, I hate it. I'm literally about to give birth, so it will be a rebirth. We're having a do-over. I have a toddler who's around here somewhere. But also, if you're feeling nosy, the shop is now closed. Okay? This will not be happening a third time, unless the stars align, which please pray against that. Okay? What I want to do is be really super spiritual and tell you some examples of my life where I've been reborn and God has just walked me through them, and they've been magical now, and I have all these deep life lessons to share with you. And because I just listened to the Lord and followed on this path of rebirth, and I want to tell you that because I want you to think that I have it together. What I really don't want to talk about is the actual birth that I had with Nova, who's my 2.5-year-old. And I don't want to talk about it because I'm still emotional about it, and I'm not over it. And I sat down to write this, and I stared at my computer for an hour. And then I ended up scrolling on Amazon for small 3-shelf bookcases to put in Nova's room for another hour. And I was like, oh no, I'm not going to have anything to say on Sunday. So some of you know this already, but some of you were not here when all of this went down. So I got pregnant at the beginning of March 2020. After a really terrible, drawn-out, life-threatening miscarriage that we had in 2019, and Nova was not a COVID baby, despite the timing, okay? She was when my brother and his wife and their 1-year-old moved out of our house baby. Conveniently and unrelatedly, 3 weeks before a global lockdown. I was like, thank the Lord. So I found out I was pregnant like literally a couple of weeks after we started Different Church. And we were trying, but I was still surprised because it had taken us a really long time to get the first one that didn't make it and then to get this one. And also, like, not the best timing in the world. I was like, I'm pregnant. And then the world was like, we're closed. There's no more, you don't go outside your house now. And I was so sick, like every day, all day, for 9 months. And I can count on one hand the amount of times I did not feel like throwing up during 9 months. And I was worried every day. I wasn't really worried about COVID, but I was worried that we were going to lose that baby. Like, I was worried that she wasn't going to make it. And I was also feeling really guilty because I hated being pregnant. Like 0 of 10 stars. Do not recommend. Hated it. Which is like a hard on your brain because you're like, I worked for this. Like, I chose this. And people will tell you that about having kids too. They'll be like, didn't you choose this? Yeah, it doesn't mean it doesn't suck. Okay, they're terrible. Like, what was I doing being so ungrateful for this thing that I had wanted for so long? And it was COVID, so the doctor's appointments were limited. Josiah didn't get to go to a single one with me. Not a regular appointment, not an ultrasound, nothing. It was just me in a little cold room with a mask on, alone, and my anxiety. And then a doctor would come in with a mask on and just poke me a little bit and then be like, oh, okay, see you in a month. And I was like, okay, well, what about all these things that I'm complaining about? And they're like, well, you're pregnant, so good luck with that. And I wanted some support. Like, I wanted to have a doula, and I wanted to take the labor and delivery classes, and I wanted to, like, go to a mom group and, like, do all the things, and it was all canceled. All of it was canceled. There wasn't even any Zoom classes at the hospital, which doesn't make sense because the whole world was living on Zoom at the time. And they were like, we don't know how to work that here. Sorry. And At the hospital, when it came time to actually give birth, they wouldn't let Josiah in the door. They were like, we have to make sure you're having a baby first. These aren't just practice contractions. And I was like, I didn't say anything because I couldn't talk. But I was like, I'm having a baby. Like, I can't even stand up. So they took me upstairs, and the nurse came around the corner, much like Jarrett's story, lifted the sheet and was like, ooh. It was like, you're having a baby. And I was like, I know. You'll get my husband right now. And then they finally let him in. They made him, like, park down the street for a while. So they let him in, but then we weren't allowed to leave. I mean, I wasn't trying to leave. I had just been hit by a truck. But, like, he was doing laps around the nurse's station because they wouldn't let us off the floor, or you don't get back in. Like, there's no visitors. There's no ordering outside food. Nothing. You're just there. And they don't really tell you anything when you have a baby. They'll be like, oh, this is how you burp a baby. But not why. They'll give you a newborn and be like, good luck. You've got this, even though you don't at all. So we went home, and my husband had started a new job, and I only had like a few days off, and I didn't have any paid maternity leave of any kind at my job, so we had like scraped together enough for me to be at home for 6 weeks. And then I was working in a law firm at the time. Different was not paying me. We were just doing Different as our side hustle, Jarrett and I. And I called in every favor I could think of to get 4 weeks of preaching off after Nova was born. And then it was back to me. And she was a pretty fussy baby. Like, every baby cries, but like borderline colic, like fussy. Not all her fault. I was a pretty fussy parent. I was anxious and I was nervous and I probably cried as much as she did. And at 6 weeks, I was like, oh, okay, I finally feel like maybe a little bit of a person. And then I went back to work with her attached to me all day, every day in an office, which she hated. And she screamed all the way there. And most of the time there, she once screamed there so loudly that they heard her through 2 walls, which turned out to be a blessing. I had a tiny baby advocate for me. And they were like, would you like to work from home a little more? I was like, yes. So we did that routine for like 6 months. Go to the office with a baby who didn't want to be there. I didn't want to be there. Try to nurse her, which was its own struggle. Make it home. Try to keep up with things for Different. Try to keep up with things in life. Fall into bed until she woke up hungry in the middle of the night. And then just keep rinse and repeat and just do that and do that and do that and do that. And the only reason we survived is usually because, like, my mom would come over every weekend and she would take her for one night and I would sleep for one night. And then the next morning I would disappear to Starbucks and be like, what am I going to say tomorrow in church? I don't know. I don't know if it's coherent. I refuse to go listen to those podcast episodes. And then my mom would hold her on Sundays while I spoke in the back. And then Josiah would be doing setup and teardown of all of this. And I used to time how long it would take me in a day to be like, I cannot do this. Usually 10 a.m. Like, I don't think we ever made it to like 5 p.m. Every day. Even if I didn't say it out loud, I would be thinking it. Like, I can't do this. I cannot do this. But of course, we kept doing it. You don't have a choice. Like, it's amazing what you can keep doing when you literally have no choice. And eventually the board of Different was like, it seems as though you are drowning. And I was like, well, yes. I don't know. That's an accurate word. And they're like, what if we just replace the $15 you're making at the law firm and we have some money saved because it was COVID? And I was like, no. I like actively resisted it. I was like, this cannot happen. Like, Different church has to exist. Like, we can't use that money for anything. So it ended up being like a trial period. I was like, what if we only try it for 6 months? Well, that was 2 years ago. So yay, God. And like, we're still there. That's my kid laughing in the back. We survived like the hardest period I think I've ever experienced in my life, and she is excellent and hilarious and intense and sweet and ridiculous. Like, she's so funny, and I still feel out of control some days, but overall I'm not drowning. And I'm obviously telling you all this because I want you to be depressed. And I want you to never have children. No, I'm just kidding. What I want you to take is a couple of things. And the first is an emotional fact. And it's this. And this has come up in everybody has said this so far. Despite how truly overwhelming the entire experience was, being pregnant, having a baby during a pandemic, having that specific, very intense, fussy baby, despite my mental health being horrendous, despite me saying every day I can't do this, I would do it 1,000 times again if I got Nova out of the deal. She's worth it. She's worth every minute of lost sleep, every time I was up anxious in the middle of the night watching her breathe, every time I lost my cool and had to apologize. Like, she's worth it. She's magical. And that's how I should feel about her, right? Because she is magical. She is miraculous. She is the baby that I prayed for. She's worth every struggle. And when I say I would literally do anything for her, I already have. I would do it again in a heartbeat, which gives me an entirely new perspective on the love of God. Matthew 7:11 says, if you know how to give good gifts to your children, how much more will your Father in heaven give what is good? If we who are human and mess up and lose our cool and aren't always patient and do the best we can, but often have no idea what we're doing, if we still love our kids fiercely and completely, how much more does God love us that way? Even on our worst day, I can look at her and be like, great. She's great. Do you know God feels that way about you too all the time? Like, on your worst day, your worst month, your worst decisions, your worst reactions, God still looks at you and thinks that you are a miracle. You are good. You are worth it. And even if you don't really want to talk to God, or you're not really sure if God even exists, or you honestly just don't want to deal with church or faith anymore, God still looks at you and thinks, I would do that 1,000 times again. I would be on this journey with you 1,000 times again. I would love you this deeply 1,000 times again. I would reach out my hands to you 1,000 times again until you realize that rebirth is possible. And you'll never be alone in the process. The second thing you should know is a science fact. The process of becoming a mother, or a person who has birthed a baby, hormonally in your body is the equivalent of adolescence. Do y'all remember when the teenage hormones kicked in? Would you like to do that again? Anyone want to sign up for that? The physical, emotional, and I'm going to say even spiritual changes that happen to a body when a person gives birth is phenomenal. Like, if you have kids or are currently pregnant or are thinking of having kids, you need to know this, okay? Because you're not off your rocker, you're not crazy or fundamentally broken, or any other label you might try to put on yourself. You are literally being reborn when your child is born. Your entire body chemistry has changed permanently when this happens. Of course you feel crazy, but you're not. And I should say, if you're just a person who lives in the world kid-free, bless you, keep doing that. We want to live vicariously through you. You need to remember this fact. Like, just remember that your friends and family members who are going through birth are basically going through adolescence, but instead of getting to sulk in their rooms and sleep until noon and listen to emo music and yell at their parents, they are being screamed at 24/7 by a tiny poop machine. Okay? Be kind, okay? Just be kind. Help them. Just imagine you as a teenager and then just being screamed at with no sleep. The third thing you should know is a spiritual fact. And we talk about this one a lot, and it's the idea that we've been sold a lie in evangelical Christianity that says life is supposed to be easy. If you're doing it right, if you're doing faith right, it should be easy, things should work out, God should keep you from pain. And it's false. Glennon Doyle says, life doesn't feel hard because you're doing it wrong, it feels hard because you're doing it right. We will never get rid of the fact that life is hard, so we have to get rid of the lie in our minds that it's supposed to be easy. Sometimes we get mad at God about this, about how freaking hard it is. But I want you to remember is that God does not cause our pain, but God doesn't waste it either. Whatever you have been through, it has not been wasted. All the sleepless, hopeless, relentless nights that I spent with Nova at the beginning of her life, they were not pointless. They weren't wasted. It was a perfect storm, right, of everything turning into one giant tornado of terribleness. And it was painful, but it wasn't wasted. I can't tell you how many moms I have been able to support in the last 2.5 years since Nova has been born. I cannot tell you how many honest, no bullcrap conversations I have gotten to have with new parents or expecting parents about what is actually happening. I have gotten to hold space for people who feel like they are drowning or crazy or ruining their children, and I have been invited into homes and lives that I would never have had access to. And I get to go and be a calm presence and maybe shine a little light. Doesn't mean I'm over it, but it wasn't wasted. God saw. God was there. And whatever you have been through, whether it's related to kids or not related to kids, just know that it's not going to be wasted either. You're going to get to use what you've been through to lighten someone else's load. And if you do that, it will help you be reborn too. You can come back up here. This baby, his name will be Noah. Much like Jarrett and Tiffany, we have never agreed on a baby name. My husband and I. This is the only boy name we have ever agreed on in 12 years of marriage. So I've already gotten Nova and Noah mixed up, and he's not even here. It's been kind of a rebirth for me. Like, we got pregnant. We had another miscarriage last year that ended in emergency surgery. And I just assumed this time I would be anxious every moment, that it would be terrible and lonely and hard, and it would just be a repeat of everything that has happened before. But it hasn't been. I've had mental health support the whole time. My anxiety is present, but she's not driving the car. I am surrounded by friends and family and also an entire church community that genuinely gives a crap about me and this baby, which I will never take for granted, especially after being cut off completely from the faith community that we had before. I got to take all the classes that were canceled during COVID. I have a doula who's gonna be able to have words when I'm like, I'm having a baby. That's not what came out when I gave birth with Nova, okay. But I'm not gonna let you in on what came out. Collectively, you should just know that I said more F words in that tiny amount of time, because the whole process was only 6 hours, than I've said my whole life combined. 0 of 10 stars. Don't recommend. I have nursing support lined up. He's not here yet. It's been hard and I've been sick, but I'm not drowning and I've never been alone. And it feels like a rebirth. It feels like a do-over. It feels like a redeeming of everything that happened before. Because Joel chapter 2 says this, and God's talking, I will restore to you the years that the locusts have eaten. God can do that for you too. Whatever your mental health ate, whatever the church ate, whatever your family ate, whatever your trauma in your life has eaten, God can restore all of it to you. That part of your life can be reborn. You just have to keep going. You just have to keep moving. You just have to keep trying. God loves you fiercely. And the time when you are reborn, it will not be into a terrible, cold, lonely world where you can't see anyone's face. It will be into the safety and the warmth and the infinite love of God. So we're going to do something special to close, which is communion. And we have a ridiculous different church communion because we are a ridiculous different church. And there's some juice in the back and also some Oreos. It's not about the elements, okay? If you want to eat one tiny piece of bread that tastes like a piece of cardboard and call it the body of Christ, that's fine. But I am pregnant and I needed white cranberry peach juice and Oreos. Not a teeny tiny piece of a bread roll. It's on a table in the back. Lori's going to play in the background, which I'm very grateful for. And you'll notice that there's nothing poured. There's no juice cups poured. There's no pre-portioned Oreos. There's also gluten-free Oreos if you're feeling really healthy. Oreos are vegan, just so you know. There's nothing real about them. I want you to go with someone, which I know may be uncomfortable, but that is the point of communion, is to be together. Go with your friend, go with the person you're sitting next to, go with the person at the next table. If you're sitting by yourself, why? Because one of the main points of Jesus coming to earth and saying, do this and remember me, is that God loved us so fiercely and so deeply that God chose to be with us, to become human and live with us, so that we would be utterly convinced that we are not alone. You're not alone. You never have been. You never will be. We're here for you. We're not going anywhere. Neither is God. And if for any reason you have been kept from the communion table in your life, please let me say unequivocally, there's no reason you cannot go there. It is completely open. And if for any reason you don't feel comfortable participating, stay where you are. No judgment. So Lori will play. Y'all go get yourself some juice and Oreos. And just remind yourself that this is a sacred space and God is here and we're all being reborn. And then once everyone has had a moment, we will go and I'll just end in a prayer. Holy God, you know us intimately and honestly. You see through our constant smiles, our it's fine, everything's fine, that we speak through gritted teeth. When everything starts to look the same, when we start to wonder what the point is, when we feel like we're just surviving, remind us that we are not alone. Remind us that your wild, all-encompassing, sacred presence surrounds us at all times and in all places. Our pain is not wasted. We will be reborn. Indeed, we already have been reborn. Give us a finger to hold as we take our first shaky, stumbling steps towards wholeness. Can you say amen?
Amen.